Welcome back to Ring of Fire. I'm Mike Papantonio. Unless you're a member of the top 1% of Americans, your credit rating is your only access to buying a house or buying a car, even buying a cell phone for that matter. That rating number means everything to the banks, and even the slightest error on your credit report could prevent you from buying a home or getting a new car. That's why a recent FTC report was such a shock when it revealed that millions of Americans have bad mistakes on the reports that weren't supposed to be there. Joining me now to talk about the FTC report and what it means for consumers is Howard Nations. Howard, the FTC is giving us some information that consumers ought to be very, very concerned about where it comes to their credit rating. Lay that story out for us.
Well, in 2004, the Congress told the FTC that they wanted to report every 2 years on the activities of the credit reporting services because it was an obvious problem. They were getting complaints from their constituents. So in the latest report, which came out last week, the 2012 report, the FTC has determined, rather astonishingly, that of the 200 million people who are on whom they keep credit reports, they found that 40 million of those people have errors in the credit reports, and 20 million have errors that adversely affect their credit scores. And the adverse affecting of credit scores can have absolutely devastating repercussions on us as consumers. A quick example.
Well, Howard, if you think about, I mean, isn't the problem, unless you're in that top 1% that doesn't worry about credit, you have to go buy, you have to buy a car, you got to buy a house. You have to have good credit rating in order to function in today's society. So now the FTC is telling us that there's about a 27% failure in how accurate these reports are. But isn't part of the problem, Howard, that these credit reports aren't really, they're not for consumers, they're for business. We think that credit report is made to make our lives better, but it's not. It's made to make the bank's lives better, isn't it? Explain that.
Well, the actual customers of the credit bureaus are the banks, credit card companies, and the mortgage companies, and other businesses who order reports on individual consumers. They are the customers. The consumer, who is the subject of the report, is not at all their concern. They make their money by selling the credit reports on consumers to banks, credit card companies, and mortgage companies. So those are their customers.
Howard, give me an example of a horror story. I think everybody's had some run-in with some kind of credit reporting, but give me the horror stories and how it really affects somebody's life.
I'll give you a horror story that's pretty incredible. There was a retired military man by the name of David Smith. Got that? David Smith. There was another David Smith on the planet who had a bankruptcy. They got this David Smith confused with the other David Smith for whatever reason, and they reported to his bank that he had filed bankruptcy. The bank began foreclosure proceedings on this retired military officer. He had an unbelievably difficult time in trying to straighten up the simple proposition that I am not the same David Smith who filed bankruptcy. You would think that would be very simple, but it's not.
What happens, Howard, when somebody says, I have a problem with a credit report that you sent to me? I've looked at it, it's wrong. And the consumer thinks, okay, well, there's somebody that's really going to pay attention to this. Somebody's really going to look at this and they're going to get it straightened out, and I'm going to be able to cut through all the bureaucracy and they're going to get my life right. Isn't that way, way far from the truth?
That's about as far from the truth as you can get, Mike, because the fact of the matter is the Fair Credit Reporting Act requires that they should conduct a reasonable investigation when a dispute is filed by a consumer. What actually happens will amaze you. There are two different ways you can file a complaint. You can either pick up the phone and call an 800 number, in which case you will talk to someone in India who has absolutely no authority whatsoever to handle your dispute. What the people in India will do is to try to convince you that the only way you can get a dispute resolved is to go back online and file their online complaint. Now, when you file an online complaint, amazingly enough, this is then sent to their dispute resolution center, which is located in Chile, and there's another one located in India, another one located in the Philippines with the 3 companies. In Chile, for example, they are handled by very young people who have the duty of going through 90 of these per day. They will review only enough of the dispute, the form that you file, to determine just the very largest general nature, and they will reduce that to a 2-letter code. For example, if you submit a very lengthy affidavit that you're David Smith and that you're the wrong person, you did not file bankruptcy, this is not your transaction, and you submit all kinds of paperwork to support that, the person reviewing that will simply go through it long enough to determine that you're saying that this is the wrong person. They will put the letters WP on it, and their work is done. They can't phone you, they can't email you, they have absolutely no authority.
As a practical matter, Howard, nothing happens. Nothing happens. You have the agency that says they complied with the letter of the law, but the consumer whose life is upside down because they've been told they can't buy a house, they can't buy a car, they know that the credit reporting is completely wrong, but as a practical matter, nothing really happens. Isn't part of the problem, Howard, that you used to have an intensely personal process of credit review and credit reporting. It was person to person, it was bank to person, it was agency to person. Now you have it being taken where you simply have somebody keying in information, somebody in India, as you say, or somebody in Chile. It could be a design in the software, it could be a problem there, it could be incorrect social security number, it could be a wrong keystroke. And all of a sudden, a guy like David Smith has his life turned upside down because some bumpkin who's unwilling to do their job or is not even directed to do their job doesn't have control, even if they find a mistake.
That's absolutely correct, and it takes literally years to get this done, and in most cases, people just wait the 7 years until it goes off the credit report automatically.
Well, Howard, I thought something that's remarkable to me is you started the program and you talked about the numbers of reviews that the FTC engaged in to review and see is there any problem. And it was about 26 or 27% of the reviews that were done were failed. They were failures on the part of the reporting agency. Now, the agencies think that that's a big success, don't they? They came back and said, well, gee, we did really well. We only had a 26 or 27% failure rate, incompetence rate, stupidity rate. We only failed 26 or 27% of the time. Did I get that right?
Can you think of any other business that would think they were doing well with a 26% failure rate? Yes, you got it right, but I'll tell you why they think it's fine. Is because let's say you have a consumer applies for a mortgage, and the mortgage company requests their credit report. They get the credit report, and there's a mistake on it. And so they go back to the consumer and they say, well, we can make this loan to you, but we have to increase your interest rate because you have bad credit. Or they just go back and say, we're going to increase your interest rate, and they don't tell them why. The customer, which is the mortgage company, gets more money. They make more money because there is a mistake in the credit report. So the customer is, they're perfectly happy. Not so much with the consumer.
What are the remedies? I mean, somebody's out there. You just gave us one story. There are many, many other stories that end up in tragedy. People losing their home, people losing their car, kids having to leave college because of all different kinds of screw-ups by rating agencies. So what is the remedy? What does somebody do? It's kind of limited, isn't it?
Well, it's very limited because under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the remedies are for either negligent or a willful noncompliance. If it's a negligent noncompliance, you can recover your economic general damages, just your economic losses. If it is a willful noncompliance, your economic losses are restricted to more than $100 or less than $1,000, but then you're entitled to recover punitive damages. But as you know, punitive damages have to have a reasonable relationship mathematically to the general damages.
Could be three times the amount, which means nothing.
Exactly.
The life is ruined.
And
there's nothing that can happen.
And the one other thing that's important, though, people need to know, is that you also can recover attorney's fees. So your attorney can recover their fees if you choose to prosecute these people.
Howard, isn't part of the problem, it's always about politics. I mean, really, you follow the money on any story like this, it's about politics. I was looking at the part of the story where Penny Pritzker, who's very, very close to the Obama administration, one of the biggest fundraisers that the Obama administration has had in two cycles. Well, she was chairman of TransUnion, yes, which is actually one of the biggest reporting agencies in the world, not just the country.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden she has the ear of the president, and any time there's an attempt to try to reform this process, put some teeth into the process, you have the Penny Pritzkers and the other agencies that put so much money into election cycles that say, no, we don't want any change.
Well, they also
in a minute, tell me what your thought is.
Well, you also have the fact that when TransUnion was sold under Penny Pritzker, it was sold to Goldman Sachs. You think maybe they have the ear of the President of the United States? They have the ear of every president. So yes, it's a power thing in Washington, and it's the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules.
And right now, is there any question in your mind that those agencies have so much power and so much control at the top of the heap that there's not going to be any real meaningful reform here?
There will be no meaningful reform, and to quote Attorney General Mike DeWine of Ohio says, they're breaking the law, they are violating the Federal Credit Reporting Act every day, and they do absolutely no investigations at all. He fortunately is investigating them, but certainly nothing is going to come out of the federal government that changes this in any way.
Howard Nations, great information as usual. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure, Mike.
Howard Nations is the past president of the National Trial Lawyers Association, and he's a regular on Ring of Fire. When we come back, we'll take a look at the civil war taking place within the Republican Party. I'm Mike Papantonio, and you're watching Ring of Fire. We're going to be right back.